So evolution has two big assumptions: life from non-life, which he called spontaneous generation, and that all life came from a single, or some people like Dr. Weil say, a few common ancestors. Okay, so yes, let's talk about spontaneous generation. Guess what? Scientists have actually successfully created amino acids in a laboratory. They've done it. So here's some problems with linking that to spontaneous generation, though. The laboratory itself is a highly controlled and designed environment. The temperature, which chemicals are used, how much light, what's the atmosphere inside the test chamber, and energy is added, etc. It's not a random chance event like evolutionists would describe as the primordial Earth. Another problem: an oxygen-rich environment needed to sustain life is actually devastating to the chemical reaction that created that amino acid in the laboratory. So you need oxygen to sustain life, but oxygen is a hindrance to creating the amino acid originally. So we got a problem here. Yeah. Okay. So spontaneous generation. Yeah. Let's talk about all life coming from a common ancestor. Well, guess what? Evolution says that life started out as a simple, right? A very simple, basic organism. And over lots and lots of years, millions, maybe even billions of years, they got more and more and more complex. Okay? And this happened as, the difference between a parent and its offspring began to pile up. So, Joe, I know you got kids. George, I don't know if you do. I know I do. My kids are similar to me, but they're different from me. Okay, so the idea is that those differences over time, they kind of piled up. Okay.
I got two girls. They're completely different. I mean, they look like me, but they're moody.
Well, George, if it's any consolation, all of my kids were exactly the same. They had the same temperament, like the same things, the same kind of music. Yeah, no. So I'm kidding. Yeah, God, I think God, it's proof that God has a sense of humor. He gives us kids that are very, very different from one another, so he keeps us on our toes. Anyway, so third bullet here. If this whole piling up really happened, then at some point in the past, there needs to be, a critter that was like part fish and part frog. And that's what Dr. Job was talking about. Okay. Those are called the intermediate links or the transitional forms. But if those really existed, we would find those in the fossil record. Well, guess what? They can't find them. Now, there's a few that some people would make the argument that they're transitional forms, but there's a lot of doubt around them. And Mr. Darwin, who is considered the father of evolution, here's what he said about those intermediate links. Let me use my best Darwin voice here. Geological research, though it has added numerous species to existing and extinct genera, and has made the intervals between some groups less wide than they otherwise would have been, yet has done scarcely anything in breaking the distinction between species by connecting them together by numerous fine intermediate varieties. And this, not having been affected, is probably the gravest and most obvious of all the many objections which can be raised against my views. So even Mr. Darwin goes, ow, we haven't found any transitional forms, intermediate links. And he acknowledges that that kind of pokes major holes in his theory of evolution. So let me state it bluntly. Those intermediate links, also known as transitional forms, they don't exist. Okay? According to Darwin, the fossil record should be rife with examples of transitional forms, leading from the less to the more involved. Instead of filling the gaps in the fossil record with so-called missing links, most paleontologists found themselves facing a situation in which there were only gaps in the fossil record, with no evidence of transitional or transformational intermediates between documented fossil species. As Dr. Job said in the video, the missing links are still missing. Now, he brought up this thing called Archaeopteryx, and that's how you spell it. Lots of vowels in the middle there. But that's how it's Archaeopteryx. And some people like to make the case that, oh yeah, this is one of those transitional forms. Well, here's a fossil and here's an artist rendition of what comes out of that fossil. Okay? The picture on the right is somebody's idea of what it might have looked like. Now, I don't know about you, but if I saw something like that, I'd call it a bird. Okay? And looking at the fossils that we do have of our Archaeopteryx, this thing was a good flyer. It had hollow bones. It had a nice wingspan. You know, it was a fully developed bird. Now, maybe you've heard of this fossil called Lucy. The formal name is Australopithecus. And it was supposed to be an intermediate link between apes and humans. Well, guess what? The picture on the right are the bones that were found. So you got part of a jawbone, you got a couple pieces of the skull. There's a lot of distance between these pieces and being able to know what the entire creature looked like. All right. I do want to talk about this thing called mutation. Okay. According to evolution, mutation is what actually provided the variety from species. Okay. It's kind of those variations that pile up from the original ancestor. Here's the problem. Scientists have been studying mutations for hundreds of years, and not one of them has been shown to be beneficial to the organism. They're all detrimental. You can go do a search on fruit fly mutations, and every mutation that they've observed has been detrimental. They get antennas growing out of eyeballs or different weird things. Okay. In other words, mutations hurt. They don't help life. Yeah. So hopefully that's giving you some things to think about and some information to keep in your hip pocket. All right. I did have you watch a video on the woodpecker. That was, I mean, just the way God put the brain in there and shock absorbers, and it just, wow. Totally amazing to me. Anyway. No, I'm not going to watch the video on this one, but I do want to share with you some other thoughts about evolution. And Dr. Job kind of hinted at it when he talked about molecules forming together to come to life, and that those then you got more and more complex to become man. Okay, maybe you've heard of this guy Neil deGrasse Tyson, smart man. Okay, brilliant. Okay, he's got a book out called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Okay, and let's see, I've got a copy of it. Where did I put it? Well, I can't find it right now. Anyway, This is a quote out of his book. He says, "We are stardust brought to life and empowered by the universe to figure itself out, and we have only just begun." So the idea here is that there was this big bang, and then the matter of the universe, because of gravity, started to coalesce. And as it coalesced, it started forming stars, and stars became these nuclear reactors that were using hydrogen and helium, some of the original smallest elements, and that through those nuclear reactions, the heavier elements, things like lithium and mercury and titanium and iron all got formed, and those then came together to form planets orbiting the stars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, like what Dr. Job was talking about, those bare raw chemicals somehow spontaneously generated into life, and it started out as simple life, and that simple life then got more and more complex through mutations until finally we have man. So you're stardust, and those molecules evolved from molecules into man, which on the surface sounds kind of cool, but random chance over long periods of time organized matter, meaning stardust, into self-replicating information systems more complex than anything that we've ever built. That's what that means, molecules to man. Another way of looking at it is, guess what? You're just a cosmic accident. And if you're a cosmic accident, guess what? You have no value. You have no purpose. Megan, George, Joe, how's that sit with you? You're a cosmic accident. What do you think?
Professor, I
There
wonder
was
if
a
there's. No, go ahead, Joe.
well, I was just going to say there was a point in my faith back in 2010 when I actually left the faith and became an atheist, quote unquote. There was just a lot, and I was holding to it. I got to tell you, man, being an atheist, one of the things that hit me and eventually drove me back to believing in God and going back to the church was the fact that I realized that if there is no God, then I have no purpose as a human being. And literally, the purpose of my life became let me eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow I die. That's what happened when I became an atheist. Was I was like, well, if there's no God, there's no purpose, and I can just do whatever the heck I want.
Yep. Yep. George?
So I come to this from the other side, from the being always an atheist, like always. And I was fine with purposeless life. Like I was fine with like, you know what? There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. I guess we die. I guess I love Cosmos. I saw the entire thing. I want to talk
Did
like
you?
Carl Sagan someday. Like it's awesome. It's beautiful. It's very well produced. It's super trippy. Um, he dismisses a
Yep.
bunch of things, whatever. But the thing that I'm concerned, I worry about science is that in an act of absolute stubbornness, when faced with an option that doesn't align with their worldview, they put science to the side. And that's irresponsible. That's unscientific. Just because I don't like the fact that this is starting to sound like what they're saying, I say I scrub it. So that means what happens if there's an atheist scientist who comes to the conclusion, dude, I'm sure there are, evolution's fluked. There's a bunch of holes. Is he gonna keep quiet? Is he gonna be scared to come out and say, you know what? I'm agnostic, I'm atheist, I'm a whatever, but this is wrong. Like this doesn't add up. Like the rules we apply to other things to prove that they're true, we look away on this subject because we don't like where it's taking us. And that's messed up. So science has become the religion of 600 years ago. Or, like, because before it was religion was afraid to say these things because it pointed to them. And we shut religion down because they did that. And now the pendulum swung the complete opposite direction where science is being unscientific. It's crazy.
So I don't know if you can see this book. It's called God and the Astronomers by Robert Jastrow. This is a picture of him when he was younger. But you can find an interview of him on YouTube. And George, he's come to the point where he recognizes the implications of the science, that there must be an intelligent designer. But he is intellectually honest enough to say he doesn't like the implications, and he is purposely saying, I'm not going to go there. So he's at least gotten to the boundary and acknowledged that there must be something different. But he's also has the integrity to say, I'm not going to go there. For whatever reason, he just says, I'm not going to go there. Whereas what you just described is, yeah, go ahead.
I'm talking about all this stuff with my I told you my youth guys that I meet on Fridays, my small group, my posse, my small group, and I told them about the odds. We just went through numbers, and we play a lot of role playing games and stuff. You have a bunch of dice and stuff, and I told them, imagine you roll a d20, and as it's falling up in the air, I say 4, and the 4 comes out. That's a 1 in 20 chance that I get that. So the odds of those initial amino acids lining up in the perfect way are 1. It's like if there was such a thing as 141 to the 141 power die, and I throw it up in the air, and I call 62, and boom, it lands on 62. The odds are impossible. It's the eighth. Like I know for different people it's different things, but the thing that got me to there is a God. It was obvious. I mean, it was so blindly obvious, and what I was being was stubborn, like. Absolutely stubborn. No. But then I just saw it, and it was like, and everything just started lining up. Professor, is it true that before the Big Bang theory came up, that scientists believe that the universe existed since forever, that it was infinite, that it was just eternal, and that because of the idea of the Big Bang, they had to reconsider a bunch of things, which meant there's a beginning. So what was the original thing that pushed it? Like why? I know they have the big crunch and the big expand and all those stuff, but is science consistently errataing itself about a bunch of things like cosmology, like you know what I'm saying, like the Big Bang asterisk, and I keep telling the kids, and the more we learn, the closer it starts to sound like the Bible. Have you guys noticed this? Like the more we look out, we only know 3% of the experienceable universe. Well, what is the other 97%? It's dark matter and dark energy. Those are cop-out words. It means we don't know. Like, we know how they interact with stuff, but it's a big, I don't know. I love the science of it. I love that we're talking about these things because I'm able to discuss with the students that I have about their doubts and because they think being a religious person is illogical, when it's in fact the most logical thing you can do. It just falls perfectly in sync with everything that's observable. I mean, look outside this window. It's teeming with life. We're like a little fish tank in the middle of this horrible void of death. There's nothing out there like us. And yeah, sorry, I get excited. Sorry.
No, I'm glad you're excited because that carries over to those wonderful young men and women that God is placing, under your influence, and that carries over. But, also let me amplify, scientists use this thing called the scientific method. Well, it's a logical step-by-step process that allows us to discover. Well, guess what? And his name is Robert Grosseteste, who is the one that came up with the scientific method as a way to study creation, okay? But it's a rational process that he said, because there appears to be logic and reason and order and structure in the universe, then it makes sense that we study it in a logical, orderly, and structured manner. So the very fact that we can think logically and rationally and in a structured manner points back to the fact that there is a creator, an intelligent designer. And so we've got this tool that if we were illogical, unreasonable, unstructured, we couldn't even do science. But you're right. Now we've taken science and we've run with it and said, oh, well, okay, this science is the God. So anyway, so I thank you. I do appreciate you guys giving me your input. It's interesting. Joe, you're coming at from the standpoint that, well, wait a minute. There's something inside of me that just doesn't like the idea that I don't have value. Something just rubs me the wrong way. George, you come from the side that says, I just, this just doesn't make sense I'm using rational thinking and just, math and probabilities, it can't be. And so check out this verse from Ecclesiastes, and I like it in the Amplified translation. He says, he, meaning God, has made everything beautiful and appropriate in its time. He has also planted eternity, the sense of divine purpose in the human heart, meaning there's a mysterious longing in each of us, which nothing under the sun can satisfy except God. Now remember, and we're going to dig into it deeper, but lesson 1, I showed you that the 3 tests, the internal test, external test, and bibliographic text that we use for any ancient document, doesn't have to be, a religious document, any ancient document, that the Bible passes 2 of those better than any other document, and the 3rd one at least as good as any other ancient document. It's a trustworthy document, not because the Bible says it's trustworthy, but because we actually have external tests that validate that it's a trustworthy document. So this to me is a reasonable statement. And to me it says inherently, whether I am a follower of Jesus Christ or not, deep down in the core of my being, I know there's more to me than just this physical stuff I am made of. Now, the problem is when you take evolution's message that the implications are you're a cosmic accident, and you run it up against Ecclesiastes 3:11. So if I feed students for 40 years a steady diet of evolution, 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 okay, and inherently they've got the truth of Ecclesiastes 3:11 running around in their being, it creates a dissonance. Okay, Joe, you described it. He's going, something's not right here. And it could be cognitive dissonance, meaning just rational thinking, or in our spirit. The results of that are hopelessness or despair, which can ultimately lead some to suicide and depression. And we're seeing a lot of that. Thomas Carlyle in his book Sardis says this. He says, man's unhappiness, as I construe, comes from of his greatness. It is because there is an infinite in him. That idea of Ecclesiastes 3:11, which with all his cunning, he cannot quite bury under the finite, the physical, the material. So here's God's message in contrast to evolution's message. God created the universe. In Isaiah 45:18, he tells us God created the earth to be inhabited. So he made the universe and then he made the earth so that we would have a place to dwell. And in Psalm 139, verse 14, we are told that God created each of us fearfully and wonderfully. And Ephesians 2:10 tells us that we are God's workmanship. His workmanship. That means a craft. I mean, that conveys the idea of a quality product. And it's created to do good things. We have purpose. We have value. We're designed. And in Philippians 1:6 says, I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. That's a message of hope. In stark contrast to evolution's message that you're a cosmic accident. There's another verse that I like, Psalm 19:1. It says, "The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands." Okay, George, last time we got together, you keyed in on the privileged planet. Okay, and there's a link here, and I shared with you the book. What's interesting is this is kind of an artist's rendering of our Milky Way galaxy. And notice here in the bottom right where it says sun. That's our sun. We're not in the middle of our galaxy. We're out here on an edge. Okay, this is a different view. If you kind of look top down, we're actually out here. That red spot is our solar system, the sun and the planets. Okay, we're out here between a couple of arms in the spiral galaxy. If you get a chance to look at the privileged planet, they simplify the drawing even more. Okay, so this is where we sit. We sit out here between these two arms of the spiral. Okay, and what's really cool is where we sit. Okay, and where our galaxy sits in the universe allows us to look out and see all that he created. And I'll go into more detail when we get to astrophysics in the last lesson. It's just that we are not a cosmic accident. We are designed, we are crafted, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We have purpose, we have value. And that is a message of hope.